I think I'm entitled. You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
So I think the natural thing, if you're Donald Trump, is to try to decapitate the regime and try to deal with the remnant. Which is what they did basically in Venezuela. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. One scenario would be to try to decapitate the regime. Another would be to try to embolden the protests by, as you suggested, hit IRGC bases, but very visible. IRGC and Besiege. Besiege is the militia that is shooting all the people on the street.
The RCG is, of course, the Revolutionary Guard of Iran. The killing continues in the streets and behind the jail walls and anywhere else. Any of those who are protesting against the sitting power, the mullahs, the religious leader, they are being taken and executed. And often in the dark, but already numbers are surfacing above 5,000. 5,000 have been slaughtered. And in some cases, once again, these are young people, some elderly people that are simply in the streets crying for freedom, demanding freedom. They want to go back to the way Iran was before 1959, 95, when they took over our embassy. They were a Western world at that point. The women did not have to wear hijabs, did not have to cover their face and their eyes. They lived like any Western woman. But then the mullahs took control and said, we're going to impose a new law and everyone will follow it or you'll be executed and you'll be stoned. You were listening then to Michael Duran with Hudson Institute saying, I think what we're going to end up having to do is decapitate. Decapitate. Take the top right off. That would be the Iranian leader. Now, with that in mind, I want you to also keep this in mind because they are looking at ways that they can do this, maybe like they did Maduro, or maybe just carry out a direct strike. He's doing everything he can to hide right now. But I'm willing to tell you, and I'm willing to bet, U.S. intel and Mossad intel know exactly where he is. I wonder how he sleeps at night, if he does. He's already lost trust among many of his own troops. He fears them as much as some of the people in the streets. We're going to break it down for you. Thanks for joining us. Hour number one, Larry Connors USA. We're here every Monday through Friday for you from 6 to 8 p.m. And when we're on the air, we are streaming video. You can watch the program. You simply go to NewsTalkSTL Rumble, Facebook or Twitter, Larry Connors USA Rumble, Facebook, and reminding you everything goes up as a podcast when we complete it. It's available at NewsTalkSTL, LarryConnorsUSA.com, and Larry Connors USA Facebook. And one other thing, keep in mind, we had two great FM signals for NewsTalkSTL. But sometimes you get outside the range of those signals. We are restricted by the FCC as to how far we can broadcast those signals. But we have a solution for you. Download our free app, NewsTalkSTL. Go to your local app store that's connected to your phone and simply download it. It will cost you nothing. And you can listen to us anywhere at any time. And when you switch it on, whatever program we have on the air, you'll be listening to at that very moment. Also a great way to get the podcast and other information you would like. NewsTalkSTL, get the free app. Well, with Larry Connors USA, we guarantee you that you're going to get news, analysis, opinion, and education. And I got a piece of education coming up here shortly that is absolutely going to rock some people. In our next hour, Don Lemon Fruitcake is probably very upset because he was not arrested. There were arrests for the invasion, the mob scene at that church over the weekend in St. Paul. He was there. He was taking part of it, and he's talking. He was complaining. And you know what? He did not get arrested so far. He's not charged so far. He might end up getting his wish. But right now, he's got to be thinking, what do I have to do to be relevant again? I went in there with them. I was in there yelling and shouting, and they arrest the other people. And I'll remind you also, a couple of the agitators who went in and started that, they were anxiously talking about what we're doing. Here's what we're doing, and we're doing it. And then when the word began to circulate, you know you might have violated federal statutes and interrupting a religious event. You could be facing federal charges. Suddenly they went silent. I was on the sidewalk. I didn't really go in. Well, that has changed because Pam Bondi has suddenly stepped forward and saying, no, we are going to charge you. And we're going to get into that as well a little bit later. And in the meantime, cry for poor Don Lemon. He's not getting the attention he thinks he should be getting. In our following hour today, that will be presented. But later in this hour, a very special seminar on U.S. freedoms from former Supreme Court Justice Scalia, who, of course, passed away in 1983. But his remarks still ring true when it comes to understanding freedom. And his comparison that he makes between the freedom and the Declaration of Independence for our nation versus the Russian Constitution. This is going to have some people shaking their heads saying, what is he saying? You're going to have to listen very carefully, but you will learn when we complete that segment. And our story behind the story today, when the U.S. Army sprayed the St. Louis area, unsuspecting citizens, mostly poor, mostly black, mostly in the Pruitt-Igoe area, with toxins, chemicals. And the Army denied it at the time and then said later when it was uncovered, well, it wasn't that bad. And yet there were those reporting numerous illnesses and deaths. And, of course, don't forget we also have that Coldwater Creek incident with all the hazardous radioactive material up in the Bridgeton region. They are two separate stories, but we're going to put them together for you before we wrap up this hour in the story behind the story. Now, back to dealing with Iran. Retired four-star General Jack King.
On the street. They brought in thousands of people from other countries. To be specific about Iraqi militia, Pakistani militia, and even Afghanistani militia. They're on the streets. They've got pickup trucks with machine guns on them, and they're repressing the people from actually leaving their homes. So that is really what's stopping future demonstrations, to be sure. And nothing has changed in terms of the brutality and barbarism of this regime. And we all know this, and so do our viewing audience know it. They are who they are. And President Trump has said help is on the way, and he's also got all military options on the table. We do know for a fact that assets are being brought into the region. That's public knowledge. And I'm assuming at some point President Trump is going to fulfill that promise that he made and deliver some kind of a strike against the regime to hold them accountable for what they've done. Stuart, there's talk about the possibility of negotiations with this regime. In my view, that is misguided, to be frank about it. We should not take any step whatsoever that extends the life of this regime. We don't throw them a lifeline by legitimizing them after the horror that they have impacted on their own people.
Keep that in mind. What they've been doing to their own people. And we're going to try to walk around and say, well, let's Let's just be friends about this and call it all off and go back to normalcy. There is no normalcy in Iran, and there will not be, not under a pathetic and insufficient approach. And General King is exactly right. We're not going to throw them a lifeline. But what are we going to do to help those in the midst of this? Even Al Jazeera, the publication that focuses primarily on behalf of the leftists, the terrorists, and so forth, is saying, admitting everything is bad in Iran. Fear and anxiety gripping the Iranians, even abroad, amid these protests. Why? Well, in part because the Iranian regime has cut off all communications. No cell phone service, no internet. So for Iranians who live here in our country, are living free and maybe want to see their relatives join them, they don't know, cannot find out. Are they even alive? Once again, Michael Duran with the Hudson Institute saying you have to keep in mind Khomeini has no one around him that he can trust.
He has such distrust of the people around him that were around him because of the lies, but also distrust because of the deep penetration of Iran by Israeli intelligence. And this has led him to surround himself now by ultra loyalists who are actually much more extreme in their political views than their predecessors. That's one of the things that worries the Israelis. They're expecting a very sharp escalation by the Iranians the minute the Iranians are attacked.
And when that happens, and it should be rephrased, not when, but, and it's not just if, but when it does happen, things will escalate rapidly. Could it be resolved as simply as what we did with going after Maduro? I'd like to think so. And there are reports that the Ayatollah is talking to Russia. Can I come to your country? Trying to work out a deal that he goes to Russia. Anything to get out from under the eyes and the guns and bombs of the U.S. You know, we have Americans abroad, and you're certainly aware of them, that spend all their time trashing our nation. And they can take their cue, and probably do, from Barack Obama when he was elected. What did he do? His first trip abroad was to trash our nation, to go around and apologize. An apologetic tour like, we're so sorry what we did back during World War II, what we did here, what we did there. And now, of course, we have all these high-priced stars who made their money on U.S. consumers now going abroad and trashing our country, even though we made them rich. California Governor Newsom, a certain latest example, as described by Treasury Secretary Bessent.
I was told he was asked to give a speech on his signature policies, but he's not speaking. Because what have his economic policies brought? Outward migration from California, a gigantic budget deficit, the largest homeless population in America, and the poor folks in the Palisades who had their homes burned down. He is here hobnobbing with the global elite while his California citizens are still homeless.
Yeah, not doing a thing to help the people of the Palisades. We did. Our government did go in and immediately start removing a lot of the regulations and building permit issues so they could start rebuilding. But the governor of the state is not actually helping his citizens. They have no money. They're spending it all on the illegals. And I love this. Secretary of State Bessent, this is perfect. He compared... This is so good. He compared Newsom to someone who might be smarter, or at least on par sub-level, Kamala Harris.
I think it's very, very ironic that Governor Newsom, who strikes me as Patrick Bateman meets Sparkle Beach Ken, may be the only Californian who knows less about economics than Kamala Harris. He's here this week with his billionaire sugar daddy, Alex Soros.
Yep.
And the Davos is the perfect place for a man who, when everyone else was on lockdown, when he was having people arrested for going to church, he was having $1,000 a night meals at the French Laundry. And I'm sure the California people won't forget that. My message to Governor Newsom is the Trump administration is coming to California. We are going to crack down on waste, fraud, and abuse.
And he knows that's still to come. I'd mentioned this yesterday, that during that COVID shutdown, when he told everyone in the state, you cannot go out anywhere, you cannot go out to eat or dine or drink. But if you're with my party, we can go to the French Laundry restaurant in Napa Valley. That's a very exclusive place to dine. Very expensive. But what the hell? You're doing it on the state government dime anyway, and some of your donors are participating to help you. There you go again, claiming that you're a common person, but you're not so common, are you? At least not in your mind. I want to share something very quickly. We're going to get into it in more detail in the next hour as well. You know the story that broke yesterday about a 5-year-old child being taken and being detained, arrested by ICE agents? The opening paragraph, as it was originally written, ICE agents in Minnesota detained at least 4 children, including a 5-year-old boy. Way down in paragraph 5, it writes, the father fled on foot when ICE officers approached him. DHS said, for the child's safety, one of our officers remained with the child until we caught his father, who ran and left his child. What a brave man he is. And the child was, quote, detained. They want to use the word detained in the same sentence as arrested. It is not the same. Not the same. Coming up, a special lecture and learning experience from former Justice Scalia. And before we wrap up this hour, when the U.S. Army sprayed toxins over St. Louis, unknowingly, to the citizens. Lock and load, ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
You should know that when I endorse Wellington Environmental, it's because I believe and know they will do you right. Wellington takes pride in providing homeowners and businesses whatever they need. You need some dustless blasting, they will take care of that. You need some mold remediation, they can do that. They take pride in training their team to perform multiple services and having the equipment ready to get jobs finished. That's important to you. You make just one call, and you call a company that's been around for more than 35 years with more than 45 technicians in the field. Most of you know finding good workers, then having them show up on time could be difficult. Not for Wellington Environmental. They're there at the designated time, ready to go. Check them out to see what they could do for you. Dustless blasting or anything else you need. Wellington Environmental, 314-644-4930. 314-644-4930. Be well with Wellington. The best thing I ever did for my neck and back pain was go to Esquire Sports Medicine. Dr. Draghi and his staff can take care of those pains. If they can't, they'll refer you to a specialist. And when you're hurting, you don't want to wait. So often with Dr. Draghi and Esquire Sports Medicine, you're treated within 24 hours. For any joint or muscle pain, contact my doctor, Dr. Draghi, Esquire Sports Medicine on Big Bend, just north of 40. EsquireSportsMedicine.com. Another day must be another roofer in town. And John Beal and I were talking. He said, you know, every time you turn around, there's a new roofing company. Many of them have no idea what they're doing, and the statistics show that many will be out of business within 2 to 5 years. Who are you going to call to help you then? You need to remember only one name, John Beal. John Beal Roofing. You have a problem, he can take care of it. And we'll be here for you. John Beal Roofing. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. Renewal by Anderson asking, are you still battling cold drafts? Windows icing up again? Utility costs surging? You're worried about paying more every month? The truth is, you may already be paying for new windows and money lost to energy escaping your home. And here's the thing, you don't want to do this project twice. Renewal by Anderson spends every day replacing bad technology, poor installation of windows and doors that simply don't stand the test of time. But you can afford the best. America's most trusted window replacement company, Anderson. Call 877-WINDOWS or visit rbastl.com. Learn about our December savings event right now. 877-WINDOWS, rbastl.com. Renewal by Anderson. Superior products, exceptional service.
This is News Talk STL.
Well, I got me a gal in Pekin. She's a good old gal, okay. Oh, she's sitting there waiting by a window fan on a long, hot summer day. Oh, every day I'm working on the Illinois River, get a half a day off with pay. Oh, so boat picking up barges on a long, hot summer day.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
What do you think is the reason that America is such a free country? What is it in our Constitution that makes us what we are? And I guarantee you that the response I will get, and you will get this from almost any American, including the woman that he was talking to at the supermarket, the answer would be freedom of speech, freedom of the press, no unreasonable searches and seizures, no quartering of troops in hope, those marvelous provisions of the Bill of Rights. But then I tell them, if you think that a Bill of Rights is what sets us apart, you're crazy. Every banana republic in the world has a Bill of Rights. Every president for life has a Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights of the former evil empire, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, was much better than ours. I mean it literally. It was much better.
That is a very strong statement, and it needs clarification, which we're going to give you because we are here not just to provide news, analysis, opinion, but education. That is former Supreme Court Justice Scalia. Scalia, as you well know, appointed in 1986, passed in 2016. But in that testimony before Congress, he's talking about the Bill of Rights and how we think it makes us so much special. And he said, every country in the world has a Bill of Rights. The key here is the Bill of Rights for the citizens or the dictators. Some would say, well, that it's for the dictators. It's not really a Bill of Rights. No, it's still a Bill of Rights. It's what their right is and what your right is not. I found it fascinating, and he spent a good 10 minutes discussing this. I don't have time to air all of it. But what he's trying to make people understand, we want to praise what we have in our country and our Constitution. And inside the Constitution is the Bill of Rights. And we also have separation of powers, which is another key point. Now, they may have separation of powers in some of the other countries, and I'm not talking about third world countries. I'm talking about England. I mean, they got the Parliament, and then you get into other countries that have a king, queen, and another legislative body as well. But what we have achieved in this nation in 250 years is unique. And trying to hold on to it, there is the key. How do we hold on to it? Especially when we look around us and you got loonies everywhere. The only understanding they have of the Constitution is that it is a one C word they grab quickly if they think they're being violated or that they can use it as a bludgeon against you. I was thinking about this the other day. I'm not sure when I will do it. As you know, we're now doing the story behind the story daily in the 6 o'clock report. And in listening to Scalia and his remarks, it reminded me of something I grew up with in Texas. Murray Madeline O'Hare, atheist. Now, being a free-thinking young man and probably a little more naive than I am now with some wisdom, maturity, I probably thought, yeah, she has a right to do that. She has a right to do that. And yet in the back of my mind, I thought, why? Why would she have the right to preach against God and being taught in our churches or rather in our schools? We all come back to the basis of our Constitution, and that is freedom of speech is critical. So is freedom of religion. And now that's something the left wants to forget if they can use it against you. That's why these organizers the other day stormed the church service. And why Don Lemon Fruitcake stood there and complained, you're violating the freedom of free speech because we're not allowed to come in here and complain and yell at you. No, you're violating the freedom of religion. The ACLU has so many times found itself arguing both sides of an issue. Maybe even in the same case, and sometimes maybe years apart, sometimes not so far apart. It is again what makes our nation different. But again, back to the wisdom and the words of now deceased Justice Scalia.
We guarantee freedom of speech and of the press. Big deal. They guaranteed freedom of the speech, of the press, of street demonstrations and protests, and anyone who is caught trying to suppress criticism of the government will be called to account. Whoa, that is wonderful stuff. Of course, just words on paper. What our framers would have called a parchment guarantee. And the reason is that the real constitution of the Soviet Union, you think of the word constitution, it doesn't mean a bill, it means structure. Say a person has a sound constitution, has a sound structure. The real constitution of the Soviet Union, which is what our framers debated that whole summer in Philadelphia in 1787. They didn't talk about the Bill of Rights. That was an afterthought, wasn't it? That Constitution of the Soviet Union did not prevent the centralization of power in one person or in one party. And when that happens, the game is over. The Bill of Rights is just what our framers would call a parchment guarantee.
And there's the difference. The Bill of Rights you may hold in your hand, but if it's just a piece of paper, it has no validity, it has no standing, it has no one to help support it and enforce it and protect you, it's non-existent. It's handing out phony dollars is what it's amounting to. So yeah, you can take this down to the store and buy whatever you want if they will accept these stupid coupons, which are useless. In our nation, unfortunately, we have walked away from understanding our government as a whole. And I don't have the time to have a full civics lesson here. But many of you are already on this page and racing ahead of me. And I understand it, and I'm glad. Now, what we need to do together is get other Americans to understand what we have is so valuable and why we want it. And for all the leftists and all those who have made tons of money on the backs of U.S. citizens paying for either a sporting event, a musical event, a movie, we need to remind them, you made it here in our country. Could you show at least a little respect? And often the answer is going to be no. Once again, former Supreme Court Justice Scalia.
Saying this nowadays, and there's a lot of it going around. They talk about a dysfunctional government because there's disagreement, and the framers would have said yes. That's exactly the way we set it up. We wanted this to be power contradicting power, because the main ill that beset us, as Hamilton said in the Federalist when he talked about a separate Senate, he said, yes, it seems inconvenient, but inasmuch as the main ill that besets us is an excess of legislation, it won't be so bad. This is 1787. He didn't know what an excess of legislation was. So unless Americans can appreciate that and learn to love the separation of powers, which means learning to love the gridlock, which the framers believed would be the main protection of minorities, the main protection. If a bill is about to pass that really comes down hard on some minority, they think it's terribly unfair. It doesn't take much to throw a monkey wrench into this complex system. So Americans should appreciate that, and they should learn to love the gridlock. It's there for a reason, so that the legislation that gets out will be good legislation.
At least we hope so. What we're facing now, though, that Scalia could not know as he was making those remarks, is that we have some in government position abusing their authority, weaponizing our government against citizens. Well, no, I hear somebody, oh, you're talking about Donald Trump? No, I'm not. You could put his name in if you want, but you know who I'm talking about, and they need to be held accountable. And that gridlock does need to be busted apart. Quick note for you, of course, if you have family and friends that are going to be facing this 2,300-mile winter storm racing across our nation, stay in touch with them, because there are going to be a lot of folks that will lose power. Lines will be down. This is a dangerous storm. And if you don't need to be out on the roads and going anywhere, I'd say stay home and listen to Larry Connors USA. And in fact, what do we have coming up next? The story behind the story when the Army was poisoning St. Louisans.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
I've told you how Tom Shaw Realtors can help you buy, sell homes, farms, acreage. Listen to what Tom Shaw Realtors did in 2025. More than 100 properties sold, $52 million in sales. ShawRealtors.com. 2026, a great time to visit Lit Cigar Lounge. The Lit Cigar Facebook has numerous events from tastings to music. My main reason for going to Lit is always quality cigars, premium whiskeys. Odds are we'll see each other at Lit Cigar Lounge. A few doors down, Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta. Get a pizza baked over coals. Excellent crust and flavor. Or choose one of the many great pasta dishes. You won't leave hungry. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta and Lit Cigar Lounge in the Chesterfield Valley. Renewal by Anderson asking, are you still battling cold drafts? Windows icing up again? Utility costs surging? You're worried about paying more every month? The truth is, you may already be paying for new windows and money lost to energy escaping your home. And here's the thing, you don't want to do this project twice. Renewal by Anderson spends every day replacing bad technology, poor installation of windows and doors that simply don't stand the test of time. But you can afford the best, America's most trusted window replacement company, Anderson. Call 877-WINDOWS or visit rbastl.com. Learn about our December savings event right now. 877-WINDOWS, rbastl.com. Renewal by Anderson. Superior products, exceptional service. ever been in a wreck or felt as if you've been in a wreck? My advice, contact Dr. Bill Draghi, Esquire Sports Medicine. Yes, they can treat wreck victims, falls, other hazards of life, sports injuries. I go at least twice a month. That keeps the joints in line. Part of your spine get out of line, you start compensating, you're going to have additional pain. Don't be that guy. Visit Esquire Sports Medicine, Big Bend, just north of 40, EsquireSportsMedicine.com.
This is News Talk STL.
Well, you can tell by the way I use my walk. I'm a woman's man, no time to talk. Music loud, women walk, being kicked around since I was born. Never fall around, not your head, and you may look the other way. But we can try to understand and do your time, but make no man. Whether you're further away, everybody staying alive.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Now, Larry Connors with the story behind the story.
Now to a News Nation exclusive investigation into a secret government experiment that was carried out in St. Louis. Residents tell us they still remember a mysterious fog. Children would run through it. Mothers would try and close their windows against it. For decades, they all had questions, and now we're seeking answers. The United States Army now admits that it sprayed a chemical that contained cadmium, a known carcinogen, on a neighborhood of more than 10,000 people. Critics say this was done with no warning and no consent. Well, tonight we return to the site of that demolished neighborhood and speak with former residents who believe the government turned them into human test subjects. Although the Army admits that the test happened, it is not admitted to harming the residents. News Nation's Natasha Zuvez investigates what was in the fog and why the truth may still be buried.
The fog drifted through the streets like a ghost.
That's exactly what it looked like, a thick fog.
It was summertime, it was hot. We would just run through it as fast as we could and try to just cool ourselves off. It stuck to you.
The spray was so foul as far as the odor. It made some of us have headaches, nausea, dizziness.
That's what I remember. It made me sick.
It made a lot of people sick. They gave a lot of people illnesses that seemed to last maybe briefly, but then return later as something more serious. And the Army all the time was doing this without notifying citizens for obvious reasons. These tests were part of what they called Operation LAC, Large Area Coverage. It was a U.S. Army Chemical Corps operation dispersing microscopic zinc cadmium sulfide over much of the U.S. and Canada, St. Louis being one of the prime reasons. Why St. Louis? I'll come to that a little bit later as we go through the story behind the story. But from September 1950, they started with 6 simulated attacks that were actually focused at that time on the San Francisco Bay Area. And then by mid-March and April 52, additional trials taking place in South Carolina and Georgia. In 1957, they did the same thing in the North Sea, the east coast of Britain. And also in time, the Army admitted spraying Minnesota locations from 1953 until the mid-60s. But again, back to St. Louis. It began in the 1950s and was repeated again a year later. In that case, they were using motorized blowers atop the Pruitt-Igoe complex. Pruitt-Igoe was built as a housing facility for mostly the poor, the indigent. It was supposedly going to give them a new place and a better place to live. When I came to St. Louis in the 70s, they had been already taking down much of the Pruitt-Igoe. And some word had already begun to come out about these tests that were going on. In reference to the Pruitt-Igoe location itself, Many were saying the air was heavy, clinging to these 33 concrete towers that seemed to hold the sun captive, according to one of the writers. Children, of course, playing outside, shouts of games, and then the fog would come, hissing from nozzles on vehicles that moved slowly down the street. It was a cloud that hung thick in the air, clinging to the skin, seeping into lungs, often leaving a chemical taste in your mouth. Numerous members of the St. Louis area who grew up in Pruitt-Igoe, since it was a center of this, have now filed suit and been trying to get, and still relatives trying to get some compensation for what took place. Now, this is different. Many of us growing up as kids in the 50s, the mosquito spraying truck would come down the road, right? And how many of you would go running through the fog of that chemical truck? Parents didn't tell us don't do it. They didn't really know. And we did it, and we rode our bicycles through it on a regular basis. But this was not mosquito spray. This was a toxin that could lead to cancer. Now, a lot of sources I have that I have pulled together for this section of the story behind the story, there's so many different sources, I can't give you all of them. But I'm going to share some of the information. You heard part of one, as reported by News Nation some time ago. But one person was being quoted about the fog. He said it was a sickening, nauseating. It was horrible. You'd be driving in, you try to drive out of it if you were in your car. And she remembers headaches, nausea, dizziness. Others say they felt even worse. As one said, and I think it is certainly applicable, my government used me like a guinea pig. Now, I told you it was not just limited to St. Louis, but a lot of it did take place here, and because it had a specific reason that America, and not only America, but St. Louis was chosen. Why? And I'll come to that in just a moment. But what you had at that time, the government contended there was no health risk. They knew what they were spraying was a suspected carcinogen, could lead to cancer soon or later. They knew that. But they had reports even as late as 1994 conducted by the Army's own Center for Health Promotion and Preventative Medicine, followed by a 1997 report by the National Research Council, and they concluded, and I'm quoting here, no evidence the spraying was a health risk. But you look closer into it, and the NRC report did acknowledge, well, if you're exposed to this repeatedly, which folks were, you could have kidney, bone toxicity, lung cancer. And originally, the NRC admit, we can't really assess the risk because the key Army records, and the Army was conducting this, were classified. The Army said for national security reasons, we can't let them out. And then later the NRC, the National Research Council, and trying to do more inquiry, some of the key records, they were missing, just missing. We will never know what was in some of them. But the NRC, in its own study, did conclude that while they did not test the site, collect samples, or test residents, and didn't have all the access, they still believed the Army wouldn't have been poisoning its own people, not American citizens. That was the attitude. A lot of that might have been been buried for a long time, but I want to point out a sociologist, researcher, and at that time a retired faculty member from Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville, spent decades of her career trying to piece all this together. Dr. Lisa Martino Taylor. She found 51 vets getting cancer, even though the DOD denied they don't have cancer. The doctor said, at first I didn't believe it. I thought, this is really difficult for me to believe. So she looked into it, and she found some of the information had been missing. And the very men who designed the St. Louis test were experts at radiological warfare. Now, this is what was sprayed across the St. Louis area more than once, specifically around the Pruitt-Igoe buildings, which were mass housing at that time. We, of course, still have the issue with the Coldwater Creek, the Bridgeton landfill with hazmat materials, and that's still another part of the story of poisoning St. Louisans. Not exactly the same as what we're talking about with the stray, but I cannot do the story behind the story without also dealing with that aspect.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Do you know why I endorse Cafe Napoli, all the locations? Visit any of them, and you will quickly appreciate the quality of food, service, atmosphere. So maybe I'll see you at Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Napoli Kirkwood, Napoli 2 in Town and Country, Napoli 3 in St. Charles, right next door to Napoli C. Or maybe you'll find me at Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in the Chesterfield Valley. Now you know why I endorse Napoli, NapoliSTL.com.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Now, the end of the story behind the story.
Back in 2015, this agency did a health study on this landfill, on the Bridgeton landfill, on the nuclear radiation that was in St. Louis. And what the ATSDR concluded was that there was not significant pollution, that there was no health risk. I want to quote this: no health risk to the surrounding community. Now, since that time, we have learned that, in fact, the ATSDR report relied on faulty data, it relied on faulty methods, and there have been multiple subsequent reports, including those done by the government and the Army Corps of Engineers, that have shown that there is, in fact, extensive contamination. And as we speak right now, the Army Corps of Engineers is moving people out of their homes in the St. Louis area, those who live adjacent to this creek where the toxins are. They're moving them out of their homes because of existing, continuing nuclear radiation in their homes, in their yards. We've had schools that have been closed because of the presence of nuclear toxins in the air, in the dust, in the soil.
That is Senator Josh Hawley, June of last year, talking about what they're trying to do about the hazardous waste landfills, which is still a different story than the spraying that was taking place at Pruitt-Igoe. I mentioned to you earlier, why was St. Louis one of the cities chosen? The children of Pruitt-Igoe never knew they were living in a government experiment, and certainly neither did their parents. And the tests were carried out elsewhere, I've told you that. But why St. Louis? According to those who were taking part in these Cold War era tests, this one dubbed the large area coverage, they chose St. Louis because it was similar to Moscow. They were looking at, if we have these large building complexes, as they did with Pruitt-Igoe, that's much the way people live in Moscow. So we continue to spray over those areas, and we will get a good idea of what would happen to the Russians. Now, again, the Army denied that it was spending anything or using anything that would be detrimental. But they knew better. And, of course, between that and the Coldwater Creek incident and the hazmat material, many are still looking for some kind of settlement, some kind of compensation. As one said, they're waiting us out. They're waiting on all of us to die. And when we die, maybe they're going to wait for our kids to die. One other statement from a witness. I lost 2 older siblings to cancer. I lost a brother last month. And all of a sudden, I have kidney cancer, brain cancer, all of that you were seeing from people that lived at the Pruitt-Igoe location. According to News Nation, declassified documents reveal the Army did carry out spraying the cadmium sulfide, mostly over black and low income, and they were never told it was happening. The story behind the story. I'm not sure what story I'm going to go with for Monday, but I'll give you a heads up. Tuesday, Jamie Allman will be off on his program, so this program will air during the noon hour, Tuesday the 27th. And I will tell you the story behind the story for that day. That will be my interview with Barack Obama. That's coming up Tuesday. We've still got another hour to go of Larry Connors USA. And believe me, you don't want to miss anything. Please stand by and remember our pledge. One nation under God.
You can hear podcasts of this program at Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook.
John Bill Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call John Bill to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Bill has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Bill. Ever been in a wreck or felt as if you've been in a wreck? My advice, contact Dr. Bill Draghi, Esquire Sports Medicine. Yes, they can treat wreck victims, falls, other hazards of life, sports injuries. I go at least twice a month. That keeps the joints in line. Part of your spine get out of line, you start compensating, you're going to have additional pain. Don't be that guy. Visit Esquire Sports Medicine, Big Bend, just north of 40, EsquireSportsMedicine.com. There's only one place you can get pizza cooked over coals, Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield Valley. Of course, Napoli Brothers has a great selection of pasta dishes. Between the pizza and pasta, trust me, you will not leave hungry. Then, a few doors down, Lit Cigar Lounge, a wide variety of quality cigars, each offering a unique smoke. That cigar, some premium whiskey, all you need to do is enjoy. Lit Cigar Lounge and Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta, Chesterfield Valley. It's that time of season when families, businesses are moving. For local or long distance, I endorse McGuire Moving. Get a date set soon before the schedules are booked. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. McGuire is constantly giving back to our veterans, such as Support Dogs for Our Brave. So with McGuire, you're getting excellent service and helping our vets. McGuireMoving.com. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check Vincent'sJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Benson'sJewelers.com. Benson'sJewelers.com. Renewal by Anderson asking, are you still battling cold drafts? Windows icing up again? Utility costs surging? You're worried about paying more every month? The truth is, you may already be paying for new windows and money lost to energy escaping your home. And here's the thing, you don't want to do this project twice. Renewal by Anderson spends every day replacing bad technology, poor installation of windows and doors that simply don't stand the test of time. But you can afford the best. America's most trusted window replacement company, Anderson. Call 877-WINDOWS or visit rbastl.com. Learn about our December savings event right now. 877-WINDOWS, rbastl.com. Renewal by Anderson. Superior products, exceptional service.
This is News Talk STL.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Yesterday, I went into a church with Nakima Armstrong and I protested these white supremacists. The pastor of the church is a f***ing ICE leader in the city.
As you can see, all these pretend Christians, all these comfortable white people who are living lavish, comfortable lives while children are dragged into concentration camps.
So, you know, Pam Bondi, you want to come and arrest me? You want to come and give me charges? So be it.
So be it. And she did. He got his wish. That was one of the protesters that went into the church. They said, all right, we will arrest you and we will charge you. But you know who's upset over this? The guy who did not get charged. The judge refused to issue a charge against him. That would be Don Lemon Fruitcake. His whole plan of being there is I want to be rounded up. I want to be one of the many. I'm down with the struggle. It blew up in his face, literally. I'm going to break that down for you because that in itself is a heck of a story. Because you got all these loonies out there, they're still doing what they can to fight against ICE, and I still have yet to hear from a single one of them. Why do you stand against law enforcement trying to stop somebody and arrest them after they've already been convicted previously on molesting children and are suspected of doing it again? Tell me why. Is it because you're also a child molester? I don't really believe that, but it makes me question you. And, of course, they are the same people who hate our country. And they hate Donald Trump. We know that. But here's where the issue is. They hate Trump so much, they'd rather see our country be destroyed by bringing in all of these illegals, gang rapists, and everything else they bring with them from these countries where they came in unvetted, unchecked under Joe Biden's open border policy. Thank you, Joe Biden. And just yesterday, still another illegal in our country, illegally arrested while he was trying to use a knife to rape an 11-year-old girl. What does it take to make people sick nowadays? Have we reached the point that we just kind of, oh, it's the same old thing, no big deal? Unless it's your family, would that be the difference? Well, see, that is the difference. It could well be your family, your child, the next day. All right, welcome to hour number 2, Larry Connors USA. We're here every Monday through Friday for you from 6 to 8 p.m. And I did tell the audience in the last hour, did you miss the last hour? Oh, shame on you. All right, I know you can't listen all the time. But I did make a point that Jamie Allman is going to be off next Tuesday, the 27th. So we will air this program during his program. It won't be a 3-martini lunch, but you're more than welcome to bring a bottle of Jack and settle in for a couple of hours. That'll be next Tuesday. I'm glad Jamie's getting a chance to get some rest or whatever else he wants to do because he's hardworking. He deserves it. And I welcome the opportunity to fill in and reach some of his audience with this program. And which, by the way, you listening now and who have been listening, you're the multiplying factor. I don't care how much I continue to put out over the air, internet, or anything else. You're the ones that we need to connect with others to make sure they are listening and watching. Which, again, I remind you, while we're on the air, we are streaming video. You can watch the program. You go to NewsTalkSTL Rumble, Facebook, or Twitter. Or you go to Larry Connors, USA, Rumble, Facebook. And if you miss anything, both the video and audio are placed up as podcast at NewsTalkSTL, LarryConnorsUSA.com, Larry Connors USA Facebook, and many other sources. I literally cannot keep up with all the different platforms where we appear. If you simply search Larry Connors USA, it will open up numerous platforms for you to listen, watch at that time. So you can spread the word. And as usual, with Larry Connors USA, you are going to get news, analysis, opinion, and education. And in fact, again, in our previous hour, Justice Scalia did an excellent presentation in front of a congressional committee about, I want to say 5+ years before his death, talking about the value of our U.S. Constitution, specifically the Bill of Rights. And he made a statement which I know took a lot of folks by shock. I'm going to repeat it, but for you to have a full understanding of it, you need to go back and listen to exactly what he said. Simplified, his remarks were, every nation has a Bill of Rights. We're not so unique for that. The difference is our Bill of Rights, enshrined in our Constitution, maybe enshrined in their laws or whatever, but is actually meant to protect the individual. The Bill of Rights they have is nothing more than a piece of paper. I do really encourage you to go back and hear what Justice Scalia had to say on that subject. And reminding you again, if you have a phone, you can listen to us from anywhere. Download the free app, NewsTalkSTL free app, put it on your phone. You listen whenever you can, whatever you want to, wherever. And whatever program we have on the air at that point, you'll hear that program live. But you'll also have another way to pull up the podcast. We're doing everything we can to make it easy for you. NewsTalkSTL, #1 live conservative, and we bring it to you every day. Before we go back to the Don Lemon fruitcake nonsense that he did not get arrested like he wanted, I want to turn your attention to something else. We have watched what happened in the Davos summit and what we came out of it with based on what President Trump was trying to grab and create, I should say. And, of course, a lot of people, they were convinced, he is going to cause war and go after Greenland. That was never the plan. They take some of the remarks he makes and they decide to use it to the point where it becomes absurd. And then they have the egg on their face. With that in mind, Stephen Miller, White House spokesman, assistant to the president, is talking about all these groups that are gathering in the street, causing protests, going after ICE officers, doxing them, copying their license plate numbers, trying to get them unmasked where they can get their picture and spread it around. He says what we all know. This is a fully coordinated attack.
They're very coordinated. They have ICE spotters and ICE watchers. They use chats to communicate with each other, to identify the location, and then they train their insurgents on how to block ICE vehicles, how to try to free arrestees, and then they dox ICE officers, they follow them home, they follow them to where they sleep at night. So again, it's a sophisticated insurgency involving a large number of radicalized, extremist, violent left-wing operators stoked by the Democrat Party.
And that would include Democrat Party leaders, California Governor Newsom, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, Minnesota Governor Walz, and a list goes on and on and on. Speaking of Newsom, Treasury Secretary Bessent said, here's a guy in charge of a massive state, massive budget, and he has no clue what he's doing.
I think it's very, very ironic that Governor Newsom, who strikes me as Patrick Bateman meets Sparkle Beach Ken, may be the only Californian who knows less about economics than Kamala Harris. He's here this week with his billionaire sugar daddy, Alex Soros, and the Davos is a perfect place for a man who, when everyone else was on lockdown, when he was having people arrested for going to church, he was having $1,000 a night meals at the French Laundry, and I'm sure the California people won't forget that. My message to Governor Newsom is the Trump administration is coming to California. We are going to crack down on waste, fraud, and abuse.
And what a stab at Newsom, saying he is maybe as qualified or even less so than Kamala Harris. I love that. That's a perfect point. And keep in mind, when they were ordering all the citizens of California, you must mask up. They were arresting people on the beach, if you weren't wearing a mask. And Bessent points out, so here Newsom shows up with sugar daddy Alex Soros, George Soros' son, and he was supposedly going to give a speech to the Davos group, but apparently the offer got yanked.
I was told he was asked to give a speech on his signature policies, but he's not speaking because what have his economic policies brought? Outward migration from California, a gigantic budget deficit, the largest homeless population in America, and the poor folks in the Palisades who had their homes burned down. He is here hobnobbing with the global elite while his California citizens are still homeless.
That's not a good record. Now, whether he decided, okay, I don't want to speak, or they decided we don't want you to speak, I could care less. I played for you yesterday the stumbling, bumbling idiocy of Alex Soros. Cannot string two sentences together. I'm not even sure he can put four words together. That is the future of the leftists that will control you if they get the chance. I want to go back to how we began this segment, this hour. We're talking about these folks that got arrested because they stormed a church service. They dared Pam Bondi to do it. Well, she did.
Yesterday, I went into a church with Nakima Armstrong and I protested these white supremacists. The pastor of the church is a f***ing ICE leader in the city.
As you can see, all these pretend Christians, all these comfortable white people who are living lavish, comfortable lives while children are dragged into concentration camps.
So you know, Pam Bondi, you want to come and arrest me? You want to come and give me charges? So be it.
So be it. and talking about all these children that are suffering. How's that play in Somaliland, Minnesota, where children autistic, children starving, children that need special help and care and education are getting none of that because it was stolen from them? And they are going to go into California and uncover as much or more of that same kind of scam. And it is criminal, and I want to see people put away. But again, back to how they want to treat the men and women of law and order, be they with ICE or another federal agency. In a broadcast of the program Here and Now, the St. Paul mayor, Kahoe Her, H-E-R. I don't know if that's something she made up, so you know her pronoun. But anyway, she said, keep in mind everyone they arrested, everyone they took into custody. They have family. You're tearing away the fabric of what makes us Minnesotans. And keep in mind, they all have people who love them. I don't think children who are victimized by illegal pedophiles or their parents love them. But you go ahead and try that story. Now, again, I mentioned Don Lemon earlier. Lemon was taking part in that same protest. But he said, well, I'm here as an independent journalist, but he still wanted to be arrested. It didn't happen. A federal judge, he refused to sign a complaint against Don Lemon Fruitcake for his role in the storming of the Minnesota church service. Now, Attorney General Bondi is enraged that the judge refused to sign those charges. That's according to what the Daily Wire was told. You know what? I could care less if he's charged or not, but the bottom line is, if he wanted to be charged, charge him and lock him away. Then you'd make me happy. Oh, no, one other thing, a story was circulating yesterday that caused a lot of confusion, that ICE agents had arrested a 5-year-old. That was false. You knew it was false at first blush. But they buried the lead. They buried it, they cover it up, and they use every trick they can to confuse you. Here's what was happening. ICE agents were after the kid's father. And the kid was in the car with his father. When he saw ICE agents coming, you know what he did? What this brave man did? He jumped out of the car and ran, leaving his child in the cold of that car. So ICE did not arrest the child. They, quote, detained him until they could turn him over to someone vetted that would be taking care of him properly. But that's not the story they want you to know. It never is. I've got a guest coming up you don't want to miss. Rabbi Schoenbuck, we've had him on before. How radicalism went mainstream in the U.S. And you know he's right. The title and the topic itself make it very clear. But how did we get to the point that radicalism is now mainstream? You're going to hear from the rabbi when we come back, because he is filled with great information and a lot of good stories as well. Rabbi Daniel Schoenbuck coming up when we continue. Lock and load, ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Previously, I've told you about dustless blasting, a special service offered by Wellington Environmental. It could work for you in your place. Recently, a crew removed a driveway sealer that had failed. The owner wanted to go back to the original concrete so it could be properly sealed. Dustless blasting worked. That homeowner is happy. Now, sometimes surfaces need pressure washing instead of blasting. In fact, there was an exterior stone fireplace cleansed by pressure washing, and when it dried, all the dark stain was gone. That stone had its original appearance. Wellington is versatile with blasting. Dustless blasting, or whatever you need. They will evaluate and make a decision. How do you get them to your door? Very easy. Call 314-644-4930. 644-4930. Wellington Environmental, making your world great. In fact, be safe, be well with Wellington Environmental. McGuire Moving is silver certified, which means they are great at relocating senior citizens. In fact, McGuire is a household name because McGuire understands the stress involved when moving older adults. So if you or family members need help moving, I highly recommend McGuire Moving. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. Get a free in-home estimate. McGuireMoving.com. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check Vincent'sJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Ever been in a wreck or felt as if you've been in a wreck? My advice, contact Dr. Bill Draghi, Esquire Sports Medicine. Yes, they can treat wreck victims, falls, other hazards of life, sports injuries. I go at least twice a month. That keeps the joints in line. Part of your spine get out of line, you start compensating, you're going to have additional pain. Don't be that guy. Visit Esquire Sports Medicine, Big Bend, just north of 40. EsquireSportsMedicine.com.
This is News Talk STL.
I can feel my face when I'm with you, but I love it, and I know she'll be the death of me, at least we'll both be numb, and she'll always get the best of me, the worst is yet to come, all the misery was necessary, when what deep in love, yes I know.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Welcome back. We have had this guest on before, and all of you love to hear from him. I'm always glad to have him on board, so I'm glad it worked out. Rabbi Daniel.
Great to be here.
Rabbi Daniel Schoenbuck. Glad to have you with us again, sir. By the way,
wonderful to be back.
Well, I want to point out for the folks, you have a site that they want to check out, rabbiforamerica.com, rabbiforamerica.com, which does raise one question for me. I would think there'd be rabbis, many rabbis for America.com. Are all the rabbis in our nation on the same page?
Do you mean politically? I mean, the URL was taken when I got my website, so that's why I didn't get it, the Rabbis for America. But I don't, most rabbis, I'm an Orthodox rabbi. I'm a biblically oriented rabbi. So I would say most rabbis are aligned with my political views and my understanding of what's happening in the United States today, especially when it comes to things like the cultural left and teaming up with the Islamists in the United States to take it down. I think we're on the same page.
Well, to that extent, your article I was paying attention to that came out just a few days ago, how radicalism went mainstream in the U.S. Obviously it has, but how did we get to this point as fast as we did?
I don't know if it was very quick. I think it sped up after October 7th, when we saw in mainstream campuses like Harvard and Columbia universities, far left-wing individuals, LGBTQ, teaming up with the Islamofascists.
Yep.
And this group actually, over the last 2 years, took over American culture. But then Mamdani won in New York City, where I live right now, and he represents a blending of the left and the Islamofascists. And I understand why they're working together, because they both want to take down the most wonderful, beautiful, and powerful country in America, in the United States.
And to that extent, I'm looking at a piece that I'm going to be talking about after we wrap up with you. That is the director of the Avatar movies when they came out, David Cameron. He is among those who is deciding, I'm leaving the USA. I don't like it. And how many other stars and pro athletes have made a lot of money based on U.S. players and taxes and money they got for royalties. They're out of here because they say the USA is a bad country. They go out and trash us. They trash us.
Oh, sure. Just go let them go live in Russia, North Korea, parts of Europe. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. This is a place for people to make money. This is a place of tremendous freedom. Why do you think so many people are coming to the United States? They're coming here from third world countries because they're fleeing from the horrific despotic countries they came from. So these type of like spoiled, entitled Westerners think they could just leave America. America's given them freedom. America's given them a voice. And the Americans have been the people watching their movies. So they're just taking from us and then running away somewhere where they won't be freer at all.
You did a recent interview with Dinesh D'Souza and talking about how we reached this point. Share a little bit of that with me, will you?
Well, what's happened is the reason that the left-wing communist socialists like Mamdani and friends in the squad team up with the Islamists is because they both need each other. They have one goal in mind, is to take down biblically informed civilization, also known as Judeo-Christian civilization. So how do they do that? So the left wing in this country supplies institutional access to campuses and so on. Mm-hmm. They give them vocabulary, what to say in the media, and then they give them bureaucratic expertise. And the Islamists are just contributing demographic momentum, and they give them ideological discipline and a long-term civilization ambition. So they're really teaming up very well together. I also had a fascinating rabbi on my show a few days ago. You can watch on my podcast, rabbiforamerica.com. Right. He says that why does Islam and the left get together? Because they both want power. And what they want power from is the United States of America, the greatest country in human history. And they want to take down Judeo-Christian civilization. And that's how they're working together very carefully. Now we're seeing the influence of this in Mamdani and the DSA of America, the Democratic Socialist America. They want to take over race by race across city by city in the United States right now.
But they also want to claim it'll be better for everybody. We'll all be the same. We'll all share in the wealth.
Well, I mean, the way to confront these people is very simple. Forget their politics and their ideas. Just look at reality. If that's true, what happened to Venezuela? If that's true, what happened to Cuba? If that's true, what happened to North Korea? It's all one big lie. Because in the end, they're going to take power for themselves. That's what they want. This liberal elite that's taking over with people like Mamdani want one thing. They want power for themselves. Who's going to pay for all this power? Nobody. They're going to start taxing the rich, taxing the middle class until there's no money left and things start falling apart. We got to confront them with facts, not fiction.
And then we will see that, yes, we're all equal, but some are more equal. Shame if you're not.
Well, 100%. I mean, again, the Marxists and these Islamists, Islam means the religion of domination. They want to take over the world. They want to control things. They want to take our resources. Who's going to control the resources? A committee of people. But just look at European history. Look at Soviet history. When that happens, eventually there's a dictator that takes over, runs aside like Stalin, or in North Korea, Kim Jong-un, or in Venezuela. Thank God we got him in jail. But these are the types of tyrants that take over these communist societies. It's all based upon power. History has proven it already fails, and people are not served. They just become poorer. They become sicker. And they flee from these countries to democracies like the United States.
And to a large extent, we've watched it happen over the decades in our institutions of higher learning. But now it's reaching into the grade school and the kindergarten levels.
Well, look at Miss Rachel. There's just a controversy came out. She was been hanging out with Mamdani. He does these early childhood videos, ABC videos, and she's hanging out with Mamdani, seeing ABCs, and we just found out she's a rabid anti-Semite. She was, supporting a tweet against Jewish people. So, I mean, we can see this works together. So Mamdani now on the left are working on the nursery school level with Miss Rachel, but you see this happening in campuses as well. If you do a survey of most colleges' campuses, how many Republican professors, how many Democratic professors, 95% are Democrats. So we know these institutions are run by the left, they're run by the extreme left. And if anybody speaks out against them, they get fired. Then what happens next is people leave these campuses. Good American kids go to these campuses. They turn out to be Marxists. And then they go and they run for office, like we're seeing with Mamdani. His father's a professor at Columbia of Marxism. They run for government, then they take over with their crazy principles.
And they get the George Soros money and everything else that comes to them to ensure that they win.
They get the George Soros money. Then they get the Democratic Party that just kind of smiles, and I think they like these extremists because they get them votes from young people.
But
Again, that's what I said in my article. They're taking this as,
I'm sorry, Rabbi, but here's the point. The left, I should say the Democrats of today, if they really look back at their history, and we had a piece out yesterday from the early 1990s reference Senator Feinstein basically saying we cannot have open migration. We can't have our country run over like this. Obama has said it. Clinton has said it. Bill and Hillary. And yet they are still considered part of the Democrat Party. They're not. They're not. They would not be allowed in today's progressive party.
100% the Clintons and the Obama. I think Obama started the move towards the extreme left, but 100% it's the Democratic Socialists that are taking over this country. It's happening in real time. We're seeing this district after district in the country. We see the Squad, for example. They say AOC wants to run for president. These people they smell blood right now. They want total control and total power. And of course, this is not the Democratic Party that you and I grew up with. There were the Scoop Jackson Democrats in the 80s. These are great people. They're great Democrats. The party has changed. They say that the Democrats didn't leave the people left the Democrats right now because the left is really, really taken over at this point. And I don't know how anybody finds comfort by being in the Democratic Party anymore.
Do you think then that that's going to cause a fracture, that more of the young people, the vulnerable supposedly, are beginning to realize these people are wacky?
I hope you're right. I don't know if they're going to see the far left as wacky because their language, they just smile. Mamdani's constantly smiling all the time, giving away other people's money. He's fighting for rent control, and he was actually in a demonstration a few days ago. The nurses in New York are now on strike for several days. He's demonstrating with the nurses, but the nurses are demonstrating against him. So all he does is he goes for it's unbelievable. So all he does, he stands out there with them. And he supports the oppressed, but offers no solutions for the oppressed except tax the rich.
Yeah.
So what's going on here is remarkable.
And it's always down to that. Rabbi, I want to thank you. I know your book is doing well. The Victor Frankl podcast as well.
Yeah, it really is. And people could watch my work at rabbiforamerica.com, watch my podcast. I have fantastic guests. Important issues right now. I'm trying to help churches across America stay open because I believe that they're the last bastion of freedom in the United States.
I would agree with that. And to that extent, churches, Jewish synagogues, and even mosques that do not preach jihadist. I think we need 100%. To have a reawakening in this country.
Time to work together.
Thank you again for your time, sir. God bless.
God bless. Have a great weekend.
You bet. Rabbi Daniel Schoenbuck. The book, or follow him at rabbiforamerica.com. Rabbiforamerica.com. Interesting on so many levels, and we just barely scratched the surface. Coming up, what is going to happen with our nation if we don't understand what we have and what we need to be protecting? And unfortunately, too many do not recognize either one of those issues. But we'll lay them out for you as we move forward.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
Great news from my sponsor, Tom Shaw Realtors, proving if you want to buy, sell homes, farms, acreage, you want Tom Shaw. In 2025, selling more than 100 properties, $52 million in sales. ShawRealtors.com. When I have business clients or guests from out of town, I often take them to Cafe Napoli. I know they're going to enjoy any of the Napoli locations. Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Napoli 2 in Town and Country, Napoli 3 in St. Charles, next to Napoli C, Napoli Kirkwood, or Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in the Chesterfield Valley. Excellent food and intellectual conversation, if they bring the intellectual conversation. And NapoliSTL.com. NapoliSTL.com. Renewal by Anderson asking, are you still battling cold drafts? Windows icing up again? Utility costs surging? You're worried about paying more every month? The truth is, you may already be paying for new windows and money lost to energy escaping your home. And here's the thing. You don't want to do this project twice. Renewal by Anderson spends every day replacing bad technology, poor installation of windows and doors that simply don't stand the test of time. But you can afford the best. America's most trusted window replacement company, Anderson. Call 877-WINDOWS or visit rbastl.com. Learn about our December savings event right now. 877-WINDOWS, rbastl.com. Renewal by Anderson. Superior products, exceptional service. 2026, a great time to visit Lit Cigar Lounge. The Lit Cigar Facebook has numerous events from tastings to music. My main reason for going to Lit is always quality cigars, premium whiskeys. Odds are we'll see each other at Lit Cigar Lounge. A few doors down, Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta. Get a pizza baked over coals. Excellent crust and flavor. Or choose one of the many great pasta dishes. You won't leave hungry. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta and Lit Cigar Lounge in the Chesterfield Valley.
This is News Talk STL.
And they say you don't tug on Superman's cape, you don't spit into the wind, you don't pull a mask off an old Lone Ranger, and you don't mess around with Jim.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
There's already been in recent days a huge increase in arrests of domestic insurgents, but those numbers are going to increase. And I just want to put this back to the American people. Americans voted in a landslide to uphold the sovereignty of this country. Americans, by overwhelming majorities, oppose mass Somali fraud. Americans, by overwhelming majorities, just oppose Somali refugee resettlement in principle. So the public is behind this. Minnesota was once a pristine state, perfect education, no crime, no violence, and then they ruined all of it, and President Trump is saving it.
That's Stephen Miller from the White House, and he's absolutely correct. Minnesota was a great place to visit. Many of you may still go there during the heat of the summer. Have a good time. But parked next to you or roaming through your area could be a lot of crazies. Believe me, not all the squirrels are in the forest. I promise you that. And if you look to what's happening in California, you'd think, well, Minnesota is not California yet. But I want to share something that appeared in Politico, written by Blake Jones. This is a very interesting take on what the Democrats need to be doing if they're going to stay in control, get control, and do whatever they can to destroy our nation. They have a plan. They have a game plan. It's not very easily hidden because they think if we blare it from the highest mountain, we'll have followers gather at the beachside. The article in Politico begins, California Democrats are chasing power wherever they can find it. In other words, they are so hungry for power, they'll go anywhere to any lengths to have power. And when they have power, that means they lord over you. So much for the Marxist communists, we're all going to be living together, kumbaya. No, they want the power. So here's how it's breaking down. And California is unique because, one, you've got Newsom, supposedly, that's smart, but Treasury Secretary Besson said he's got the brain of a walnut, and he also said he's probably less qualified than Kamala, and that's not a very good comparison. But it adds that the long-shot contenders in this fortress of Democrat politics, a launching pad of the likes of Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris, Adam Schiff, are abandoning marquee races in favor of less competitive contest. So while House members and their opponents are changing districts that it's so hard to even keep track of who's going where, they're changing the game, or at least they're trying to. Now, they want the big positions, but they also have to recognize, where can I fit in? And more importantly, where can I win? The article continues. It is a frenetic scramble for office, any office really, set into overdrive by a confluence of forces in the run-up to the midterms. Now, let me take a moment. The midterms are coming this summer, fall. They're going to be important. But if you read this article in one way, it says they don't have it in their hands yet. Now, there's a lot of time to come. I do not want you to get complacent and say, well, it's not going to be that big of a deal. It is a big deal. If we do not hold the House, Trump will be facing impeachment again. And if we don't hold the Senate, he won't get anything through Congress again. He will be truly a lame duck president. Doesn't have to be that way, but it could be. So they point out a recent congressional gerrymander, high-profile retirements, term limits, the first open governor's race in 8 years in California, compressing years of ambition among Democrats into a single election. This will force the politicians to make their next move now or risk spending a cycle out of power. And that's one thing they cannot let go of. They cannot let go of power. Once they get it, they want it, they want to hold it, they want to treasure it, they want to lock it away. Jerry Brown, or rather, I should say someone who worked with Jerry Brown at one point, California Governor Gray Davis, who was chief of staff in Jerry Brown's first gubernatorial administration, stated, I cannot recall this kind of political musical chairs since I started working with Jerry Brown. That was in the fall of '74. You know what he's alluding to. They all hear the music playing, and they know at any moment it might stop. You better be ready to grab a chair. It may not be the chair you want, but make sure you've got a chair so you can stay in line for the next session. There's a former state senator they're referring to. I don't know the guy directly, but I'm going to give you what they say about him. State Senator Stephen Bradford, California. He's decided to drop from the lieutenant governor's race to run for a less competitive campaign to become state insurance commissioner. That's a big drop. But it's, again, a chance to hold on to power. Apparently, he's seen the writing on the wall and realizes, I can't win. I can't win. Well, what can I win? I'm not sure I can win the dog catcher's race, but I could possibly win state insurance commissioner. Why would he want that? My first cynical view is because there will be money to be made in various scams. I know, shame on me for going that direction, but I just can't help and do that. I mean, everything they do, they turn into a scam and they make money. And we know they're going to be dealing with California and the scams yet to come. We know that's going to happen. In the Sacramento area, one Congress member switching from current 6th district to a new district, prompting 4 serious but lower profile Democrats to jump into the race for the 6th district. Now, in this case, Republican Congressman Darrell Issa's new Democrat-leaning district has at least 11 Democrats, including local office holders who want to challenge him and see if they can take him out of that seat. They're pulling out the knives in California. And the rats are turning on each other. They will cannibalize each other if we let them. But in the end, there will be one big fat rat still standing. All right, so jumping from Politico to a similar theme that you see with the Axios. You heard Stephen Miller talking about what President Trump has done is we have a world leadership. We're showing leadership to the world and at the same time protecting our sovereignty. Well, that opens the door for the leftists to come running in and try to tear it down. And sure enough, Axios does that. They're pointing out, it's not all so happy, good times at Davos. They're saying that the world leaders are now at a crossroads over the future of ruptured global economy. Now, what does that mean, ruptured global economy? It means what they want it to mean. More importantly, it's supposed to be a dog whistle to you that things are not so good. They add that this is a dismal outlook with a ruptured global economy. And those who stuck around at the World Economic Forum in Davos, as it emptied out, they had a very gloomy view. What are we going to do to keep us together for the next time? And the question is why it matters. The author of this piece for Axios says, whichever view proves correct will be the defining feature of the global economy, one that will see longtime economic ties annihilated or simply altered. The European Central Bank president said, we depend on each other. We know we have these very strong links and binds, but she admits she's not exactly on the same page as the Canadian Prime Minister, who in his speech just days ago warning that global economic norms are shattered forever. When they do meet at Davos in the future, all of this will be exposed more so. But what's really going to happen is when Trump is off stage. You're probably familiar with actor Chris Pratt. Has a lot of credentials. American actor, leading actor in some of the highest grossing films of all time. One of the highest paid actors annually from 2015 to 2017. Big blockbuster franchises, big budget films. Definitely a bankable star. But he also has a belief in Christ. So a reporter decided to ask him, how do you see AI taking over God in our future?
What are your thoughts on AI outside of the film? In a sense, in this film, it's almost like playing God.
Oh, yeah. Well, AI is man-made, and so it cannot be God. It's inherently flawed, and it always will be because it's made by the brokenness of man. So it will always be limited the way we are limited. It is not God, and it will not replace God.
That reporter failed. They're asking a man who believes in God about AI taking over for God. Now, there are plenty of other lackeys and wackos out there they could have been asking. What do you think of AI taking over God? Oh, I think that'll be great. AI will be much better than God. You're not going to get that answer from Chris Pratt. So, as I said, the reporter probably had it in their mind, this is going to be really good. I'm going to get him to admit AI is more powerful than God. You failed. I'd mentioned earlier that the Avatar director, James Cameron, is so upset with the state of America. And he said, I need sanity. So he's going to start life anew in New Zealand. And one of the failings that he points to is how the USA handled the COVID pandemic. He spoke about relocating to New Zealand, where he both lives and has spent years working on the movies. Variety reports that he first addressed his reason for going south of the equator to seek shelter in a country that has a population of 23 million sheep, 5 million people. I'm not going to go there. There are a lot of jokes. I'm not doing that. I'll leave that to you. But he said, after the pandemic hit, New Zealand had eliminated the virus completely. They eliminated the virus twice. The third time when it showed up in a mutated form. It broke through, but fortunately they already had a 98% vaccination rate. That is why I love New Zealand. He said people there, for the most part, are just as opposed to the U.S., we had a 62% vaccination rate. And he said, where would you want to live? Look at the New Zealand people and their obedient nature. And here's the key. This is maybe where you separate the sheep from men, or not. He said, look at the New Zealand people and their obedient nature, because they followed the orders when it came to dealing with COVID. They all work for a common good. New Zealand is a socialist government, had a 3-day snap lockdown in August in 2021, never had a case of coronavirus transmission. And Cameron says, New Zealand is beautiful, and I'm going to go there for the sanity. That warms my heart, to be quite honest. It really does. It'd be good to know that director James Cameron is no longer in the USA. He is somewhere to be found in the midst of 5 million sheep. As always, thanks for listening. Enjoy your weekend. Stay warm. Stay in touch with the latest weather conditions. We're back Monday. Remember our pledge, one nation under God.